Hey kid, come here. You ready to hear the dirty secrets of a SEMA build? It's gonna blow your mind. What's up guys? Welcome back to Stay Tuned. I'm Tony Angelo. This is my new YouTube channel. And today we're gonna talk about the dirty secrets behind pretty much every SEMA build. Here's where our story starts. I have always wanted to build a drift muscle car. I was a pro drifter forever, and then kind of got back in the hot rod world in 2015 when I started at Motor Trend doing hot rod garage. And pretty much as quickly as I could, I wanted to bring those two things together. SEMA was 3 months away or so, and my buddies at Dodge hit me up and said, hey, we've got this new crate 392 Hemi coming out, 500 horsepower, 500 foot-pounds. It's a monster. What is awesome that you can jam it in? And I said, I've always wanted to build a drift car that is also a dope Mopar muscle car. The best one of all time, in my opinion, is a 70 to 74 Cuda. It's just rad looking. It's an E-body. It's as cool as it gets. There was the legendary Hemi Cuda. But the timeline was a little tight. It was like 2.5 months when we started talking about it. And I don't know if you know this, but a nice Cuda that just needs an engine costs a hell of a lot of money. And I didn't have that at the time, and don't have it now. And decided to go ahead and just do what we could. So I bought a real project car. We wheeled it into the Motor Trend garage. That's sort of my day job. You can go over there and subscribe and check out the early story of this car. It was just a shell, and we had about 6 weeks to get it done. So we brought in some extra help, thrashed super hard, and really made this thing look awesome and got it on the SEMA floor. Now that sounds like a hell of an achievement, and it is, but you gotta understand, there's some dirty secrets under this thing. We're gonna talk about them. Nice and gentle. Yep. Alright, so before we show you all of like the real dirty, grimy stuff, let's start with the good parts. So, this is a car I bought. It was rust-free, clean, $7,000. It came with a 340 motor and a couple of seats and an 8 3/4 rear end that we sold all that junk. So I think I wound up around $6,000 into the car for a straight-ish, certainly rust-free. All the panels were replaced that were rusty. Car out of Kentucky. My buddy Brendan threw it on a trailer and dragged it out to California for me. That felt like a win, and we immediately got to work, which meant sort of prepping all the metal, checking out everything we could, taking it all the way down to bare chassis, and starting to prime everything underneath. Now, when I build like a race car, I like to use a nice flat gray. We call it East Coast gray. It's Rust-Oleum dark machine gray. It's in their like industrial paint line. Goes down hard as hell. Usually lasts forever. You can see stuff like leaking on it. You can see stuff that's been burnt next to it. See, it's sort of better than a really dark color for your engine bay in a race car. You can't tell what's leaking, what's dripping, what's been burned up, anything. So this is a nice thing to do to like the whole chassis, and it's a cool color too. This is the 6.4 Hemi from Dodge, the crate motor. It came essentially with a full-on wiring harness, a gas pedal, and a tuned ECU, and a little fuse box. You threw a couple wires in, and it fires up. Runs awesome. You might notice there's one over there, our second one. The first one exploded after a couple minutes at the track because someone who isn't me forgot to put a fuel injector O-ring back in when we moved the fuel rails around. No big deal. We begged Dodge for another one. They gave us another one. And that motor actually has been fixed and is ready to drop into another car. The first person that comments on this video can have it, I think. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay, we'll see. Under hood, we've got a giant Mishimoto radiator. It kept this thing really cool with their big electric fan setup. This is the first time I've ever used this Willwood flush-up plate and pedal hanging assembly. Turned out super clean. Everything under the hood is disgusting. In Pennsylvania, we have like varmints and rodents and vermin that are attacking everything at all times. We'll get to that later. Seal the shop up, get some BB guns, whatever's got to happen. But that's under the hood. Turned out awesome. No real complaints here. Obviously, we could have spent a little bit more time making a wire loom and a few other things, but really no complaints. This thing rips. All right, so that's it for under the hood. The rest of the good stuff is really underneath the car. We're going to toss it up on the lift, and I will show you everything. faster. So here we have a bunch of the insanity underneath. Winners, quick change, independent rear end, drive shaft, shop 1000 horsepower axles, SPL parts, control arms, stance, 3-way shocks, NASCAR sway bar, fuel safe fuel cell. I'm just kidding. This is my Scion Pro Drift FRS, and we will talk about this car soon. But let's pull it off, get the Cuda up, and show you all that goodness. Still cold. Need more clothes. Pennsylvania. Sweet. So here we are underneath the Cuda, and really this is where we focused a lot of our time. And when you're starting a SEMA build, everything you do in the beginning before the crunch starts, you do a better job on. So under here is pretty fantastic. As you can see, this big dog in the middle, this is a Curry Fab 9-inch. It's a 9-inch housing that's completely fabricated from sheet metal, very stiff, integrated giant bracing throughout this thing. It's got a 411 in there. So it's got a wave track helical differential, so it locks up super fast for drifting, but you can drive it on the street. Helical is usually really great on the street, but they've got this one tuned up pretty hard. Q81 double adjustable shocks that we dialed in really well. We actually cut up their Q81 coilover conversion kit, I think it's for the A-body, and made that all work here in my Cuda. Over here, this is the most important part, and it took us the most amount of time. This is a custom 3-link suspension. 3-link suspension works awesome for road racing, drag racing, drifting, street cars, everything, because it can actually like articulate instead of a 4-link, which a lot of times like will kind of bind up. It's much better than leaf springs. Leaf spring, worst. Stock triangulated 4-link, next worst, but way better. And then you get into stuff like 3-link with a panhard bar. That's about as good as it gets for a live axle. All right, what else we got? You coming in tight?
Yeah, what makes it better for drifting?
Just the fact that it can articulate. So like drifting, you can dial in the anti-squat really easily with the way we have this upper arm set up. Again, it won't bind up ever. It's impossible because it's only 3 links. The center one allows this thing to really move and rock and sort of go through its motions without ever getting jammed up. And say like a Chevy 4-link is awesome for a stock car, or like let's say a Fox Body Mustang. They're great for what they are, how they come, but like you can't really take them road racing like you could take this thing road racing. Yeah. So I used the factory Mopar leaf spring mount here, and then made the lower arm come all the way down. These are some Ride Tech brackets that let me get the geometry correct to make sure that I can get the pinion roll right, and the anti-squat right, and everything I needed to work properly is pretty well dialed in a nice package. I got like a circle track 3rd-link upper mount that I put into the car and tied it into the frame. But this is a QA1 Mustang arm, believe it or not, that fit right off the shelf and works awesome. The back end of this car rules. I've got no complaints. For like, as we designed it and took it to the track, it rules. I got no complaints there. I was actually blown away. For a live axle car, the back end is really well dialed. Don't think I'll make many changes to it. We'll add a sway bar to it at some point, but that's it. Over here, it's a drift car. You want to have, party brake, regular brake, party brake here. These are Willwood solid rotors, which you want for like a drift car because you don't need a bunch of mass here. But they're floaters, which is great for expansion and heat. And then I've got one running to the handbrake and the same size one running to the foot brake, just because I want to make sure that they both work really well. I don't undersize the handbrake. They've got different pads in them though. This is a grippier pad on the handbrake, so when I grab it, it immediately bites in. Foot brake is a little bit colder pad. It needs to warm up a little bit more just so it doesn't fade. But handbrake, you pull it, boom, immediately it grabs, even right out of the driveway. So we're not running the heater in the shop because it's too loud for the camera. So I'm gonna bundle back up. We can talk fuel system. This is a Tanks street rod cell. I think it's really cool. We wanted the car to be like yes, drift capable, track capable a little bit, but also like a nice street car. So this is a 16-gallon cell. It's not a proper racing fuel cell, but it works good. And I'm just running right now the internal pump to a Corvette style filter / regulator. So it's a deadhead system. This is the regulator, this is the return, feed return, and then regulated feed going to the motor right there. All right, so you see here just a regular custom drive shaft connecting our trans to that rear end. It is just steel, 3-inch thick wall. That's all we really need at 500 horsepower. You can see Colin's handiwork here is obviously amazing because Colin is amazing. Okay, so for Colin, this is like his version of a quick and dirty exhaust, even though it's a masterpiece of welding. He's a lunatic. I was like, just get it done. He's like, I want to punch it through and bring it out like this, through like underneath the doors and whatever. And you know, this is what he could do in like a day or whatever it was. Knocked it out. All right, that brings us up to the transmission, which is like one of the best parts of the car. This is a Tremec T56. You know, you've probably heard lots about them. They have like triple carbon cone synchros on most of the gears. They work awesome. They hold a bunch of horsepower. You can shift them at 7,000 RPMs. And you can drive them around the street, and they have 2 overdrives. So it's really like the best street / race trans there is, in my opinion. And pretty much everybody else knows it. Quick time scatter shield here to adapt to the new Hemi. New Hemi uses a LA bolt up, which is like small block Mopar classic one. So you can use this to put a T56 behind, you know, the 340 in my Demon if you wanted to. So it's a pretty cool piece, and it's not too big. It kind of keeps it all really compact. Oh, yeah. All right. So I had my buddy Mike Scudleric come in while we were thrashing. He made these headers for the car. He runs a little shop called Detroit Drifting and does a bunch of like Fox Body SN95 drift stuff and pretty much anything else. He did a super nice job here. We call them Scuds. And those are sweet. We're also looking at the really good parts of this car. Trans, awesome. Rear end rips. Headers are sick. Lots of good stuff. SEMA dream car. So this is the underside of the 392 Hemi. I wanted to run the QA1 K member or cross member, whatever you want to call it. This is for an E-body, B-body. But then we made like all of the different control arms ourselves. This is a stock tension rod style, but it picks up a single arm that I have tied in here, and I'm using a factory upper arm with a Mustang spindle and a Flaming River rack that we put in and modified the cross member to accept it and to mount it up. Underneath, all pretty great stuff. But there's some demons lurking in there we can start talking about if you want. All right, so really all these SEMA builds start out with like big dreams, and you start running out of time, and you've just got to start like making compromises. And for me, making compromises makes me insane because I was like, this is my dream car. I just want it to be perfect. And when you realize you can't get the parts or you don't have the time to do it the way you want to do it, it really can be pretty frustrating. So that's what happened. Even in the front end here, I'm going to show you a couple things that kind of suck, and we're going to do a better job of in the future. Just kind of rework this car. I've got some big plans for it. So here you can see I made these control arms. This is totally on me. We've got this big interference here. As this car droops, you can see that the spring is running right into this mount that's originally on the frame rail, right? Not great. It's here, it's here. It's a mess. Not a good start. If you come back here, the control arms that I made are bolted on like in single shear, they call it, right? It's just held on by this bolt here. It's one of the reasons I haven't put a lot of miles on this car. One of the many reasons is because that's not super strong. This could bend, this could break. I would die, you would die. It's a bad idea. From the factory, there's a long torsion bar that runs up in here, sort of serves as this back mount, and then there's a huge pivot here. We're just using a 5/8 bolt, and it's just not really strong enough for what we should be doing with this car. Okay, so one of the other big issues of why this front end kind of sucks is that I got the steering rack width wrong, so it has a ton of bumps here. So as the car goes through its suspension, the wheels go like this. Not cool. You don't want that. It needs a wider rack, but it needs a bunch of other things that we talked about. Control arms are wag, the way the shocks hit the frame rails, all that stuff is a mess. As you can see, oil pan is taking a beating because it's kind of too low. I made this in sort of a hasty way just to get us to SEMA, but like it hasn't really done much since because it's sort of such a train wreck, but we've got big plans. All right, that's about all I can stand under here. Let's go up. Plenty more dirty, dark secrets to unfurl with this Cuda. All right, so it's a few weeks before SEMA and we're scrambling for paint, and I didn't have matching fenders for this car. We're in, the Motor Trend garage, and we decided like, oh, I found some on, we're like looking everywhere. I found some on Facebook. AMD, the biggest, replacement panel maker, was out of stock, couldn't get them. And this is where the SEMA time crunch really kills you. We just had to find something, and I found a set of Cuda fenders on Facebook. They were $1,500. We decided, bite the bullet. We're gonna get them. We need them. We have no other choice, right? I sent a PA, that's a production assistant, down to Oceanside or whatever, San Diego, south of LA to get them, and he comes back and he's like, I got the fenders. We're all good. He goes, man, these fenders are heavy as hell. I can't believe it. And I was like, they shouldn't be. What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, they're like 35 pounds a piece. And here's why. These are mostly Bondo. All right, these are a disaster. There's so much filler in these fenders, I can't even tell you. That's not even the worst part. So I was like, oh, you suck and this sucks and I hate it. And I'm gonna put these garbage fenders on my dream car because we have no other options and I have to get this car to SEMA. So come to the front, I'll show you how bad it gets. The worst part about this fender is especially the driver's side one. This should be like a crisp, thin edge that's level and like really just fits in beautifully here around the grill and around the trim. And you can see this awful, like limp, floppy line here. This is like an inch of Bondo that I sanded and tried to do my best and started to cut through the metal here because obviously this had like a big dent in it. Again, $1,500 for these junk fenders, and this is the kind of thing you do when you're like, I have to be at SEMA and we have to be there, cars are gonna get done. And it just kind of bummed me out. And it's something we're absolutely gonna have to fix. But you see, like, look how thick this is. The Cuda should be like a nice sharp front. Everything would fit really closely to this line. You couldn't stick your finger in here if these were right. Total disaster. This fender is better, but not good. You can see how thick this edge is and how it doesn't really fit. It's got a little bulge here. I worked on it as best I could. Just a bit of a dinged up Bondo filled fender. All this stuff is a mess. This folded in here because the fitment on the tire wasn't great. I never wanted to put these flares on the car. It's very drift style, but it's also like kind of janky. I've got a better idea what I wanted to do here, but this was just like a very add-on, tacky, black, last-minute solution that I wasn't in love with. And now we're gonna go to the worst part of the car in the back. All right, so it's like 2 days before SEMA. The car's got wheels sticking out as far as we planned, but like we had no way to cover them up. We got these flares that I wasn't in love with to start because they're just like old school nonsense. And last minute to get the car on the trailer, we hadn't slept in like 3 days, and I wound up just deeply hacking up my Cuda and doing a terrible job of fitting these over fenders. If you look, this is disgusting. That's the inside of the car there. This should all be like pinched up, beautifully closed off and welded. We didn't have time. I never went back and fixed it because I hate these flares and I don't like the look. And it's a mess. This is one of the reasons I like sort of let this car sit for 3 years since I've last really messed with it, because I was like, ugh, it's so gross and chopped up and hacked up underneath. I've got so much work to do, but it's 2021, we're gonna get after it. All right, so obviously the flares and the hack job I did are the worst of it. Last thing is this fishtail Spoiler, it was supposed to be like vertical, run the whole length of the trunk. I had a buddy come in, we took a 240 SX1 and sort of like cobbled it together as best we can. It doesn't fit great, it's not the right angle, it's not tall enough, it's not wide enough. That's obviously got to get fixed up. But it's time now to stop complaining about this car. It's got a dope Hemi motor, it makes a bunch of power, it's a Cuda, it's like, you know, 90% of being absolutely incredible. We need to start talking about the good stuff. And that's what we're going to do this year, but there's been a couple updates already I want to show you. Because when the car came back to Pennsylvania, I had Colin Wolf Metalworks, put in a sweet cage. And that was the first step back to redemption. The cage is sick. It's like a 6-point cage, but it's beautifully gusseted, fits incredibly well. He does unbelievable work. So I had him put that thing in. We should show it off. I mean, you got to see this thing. Okay, so the cage is the first upgrade we've made since SEMA. That's really kind of like changed the way I feel about this car. I want it to be awesome. I want it to be good. And so we're serious about making these changes. I'm going to come in and get somebody to make metal fender flares, very old school style. Feel like an old drag racer or old, you know, road race street car. That'll be awesome. The front fenders, ditch those entirely. Get fiberglass ones that we can mold in some flares, kind of do a one-off thing. That'll be sweet. And then I want to change the whole look of the car. This had a really clear, like, Trans Am racing vibe, and I want to go like 70s, like a little bit more street freak style, maybe panel paint, make it dark. I want to put an interior in this thing that makes sense for like a real street car. We're gonna make some interior panels, kind of finish this thing off, get some seats that aren't so racy and aren't so stock, and just go wild on this car. And that front suspension is gonna be gone altogether. I've got some wild plans. We're not gonna stop until this thing is really just a killer street car that you can take on a track and drift with. But, you know, drive, put some miles on it, finish it off. So we'll take this SEMA car, which, you know, has some dirty, dark secrets, and we're gonna revive it, we're gonna fix it, we're gonna make it real. So stay tuned. So